When I made a video about the 911, I imagined whether it would be possible to haul passenger cars with this high-speed diesel locomotive for operations on the Shinkansen. A short train set of a few cars might work, but considering a railway section where the Shinkansen runs, even in rural areas, it would be preferable to haul around 7 passenger cars. Following a configuration similar to the British HST, it could be feasible to use a push-pull system with 2 locomotives, each producing around 2,000 horsepower. However, securing the same seating capacity and passenger space as the 0 series would make 200 km/h operations quite challenging, and it would only be possible if the cars were compact and lightweight, similar to those of the HST. Now, let's imagine what would have happened if a Shinkansen DMU had been built using the technology of that time. During the development of the 911, efforts to increase the output of diesel-powered railcars were becoming more prominent. Engines rated at 300 horsepower and 500 horsepower were being planned, so I proceeded with the assumption that these could be utilized. Looking at later examples such as the Kiha 181 series, it appears that fitting 2 DML-30 series engines under the floor is not impossible in terms of dimensions. However, there was insufficient space for radiators and related equipment, requiring them to be placed in the machinery compartment. In contrast, Shinkansen EMUs have a body length of 25 meters, about 4 meters longer than the 181 series, and nearly 40 centimeters wider, making it feasible to accommodate radiators under the floor. Additionally, with an axle load limit of 16 tons, there would be sufficient weight allowance even with 2 DML-30 engines installed. Now, let's envision how well a Shinkansen diesel-powered train with 1,000 horsepower per car could perform. Although listed as 1,000 horsepower, the actual maximum output would be 1,180 horsepower, which is quite a promising figure. In Shinkansen operations, the duration of power application is as long as that of conventional locomotives, meaning even 0 series EMUs avoided exceeding their rated output for extended periods. However, in hydraulic railcars equipped with a direct drive stage, the engine would only reach this output in specific situations, such as accelerating up to around 150 km/h in the gear shifting stage or operating at full throttle near the maximum speed. Given the nature of Shinkansen routes, prolonged full-speed engine operation would likely not be necessary, so durability issues that arose with the Kiha 181 series on mountainous routes due to continuous converter usage might not have been a problem here. Therefore, I proceeded with the same configuration settings as conventional diesel-powered railcars. The formation would consist of 8 cars, and the basic structure would be the same as the 0 series EMUs. The bonnet section of the lead car would be equipped with service power, following the method adopted for the Kiha 81 series. A DMF-15 engine developed at the same time, without an intercooler, would generate 250 horsepower for electrical power supply. The maximum speed would be set at 210 km/h, matching the 0 series, and the hydraulic transmission would be of a 1-stage, 3-element type, ensuring torque remains high even at high speeds, similar to the new series diesel-powered railcars introduced after the Kiha 91 series. With the lead car weighing 64 tons and middle bogies cars at 60 tons, the calculated acceleration curve is as follows. The balancing speed at 10 per mile is approximately 190 km/h, which is slightly lower than the 12-car formation of the 0 series but nearly the same as a short 6M formation. On the other hand, at 20 per mile, the speed drops sharply to 124 km/h. Compared to the 0 series, which can climb at over 160 km/h, this is a considerably poor figure, highlighting the weaknesses of the single-stage hydraulic direct drive system. Now, let's compare this with the previously imagined push-pull train hauled by locomotives. In the locomotive system, the engine output is large, preventing the use of a direct drive mechanism. Instead, a 3-stage hydraulic transmission is used to switch between speeds, maintaining almost constant output at wheel rim from low to high speeds. However, losses in the hydraulic transmission reduce effective output. Conversely, in DMUs, the hydraulic transmission is single-stage, which is disadvantageous as efficiency drops significantly at both low and high speeds. However, since the engine output is smaller, a direct drive mechanism can be incorporated to compensate for efficiency loss at high speeds, allowing tractive effort to be transmitted efficiently to the wheel rim in the direct drive stage. Unlike electric motors or gas turbines, diesel engines generate constant torque regardless of RPM, meaning their full potential is realized only near maximum RPM. For Shinkansen applications, even on non-electrified lines, the track standards would likely be sufficient to mitigate the weaknesses of diesel operation at speeds below maximum velocity. When compared with centralized locomotive traction, the difference in performance is striking. Even when assuming lightweight passenger cars similar to the British HST, a 9-car locomotive hauled formation would generate 4,000 horsepower, whereas the all-MDMU configuration, although nearly 20% heavier, produces 9,440 horsepower across 8 cars. The substantial difference in total output, combined with efficient direct drive operation at high speeds, results in a dramatic performance advantage. This capability surpasses even the Class 180, a distributed power replacement for the HST introduced later in the UK. The Class 180 features a 750 horsepower engine with a 2-stage hydraulic transmission using Voith fluid couplings, but it cannot match the imagined power of an DMU equipped with 2 DML30 engines. In Britain, where ride quality is highly valued, the conventional locomotive-hauled HST was not immediately retired even after the introduction of high-speed DMUs. Despite their strong performance, distributed power trains were avoided due to noise concerns. How would this configuration perform? On level track, acceleration is impressive, reaching nearly 100 km per hour within a minute after departure, and approaching 120 km per hour within 2 km, far outperforming the 0 Series EMUs, demonstrating the full potential of the 1,000 horsepower EMUs. However, such high acceleration at departure has little practical application for Shinkansen operations, except for emergency stops outside stations. Now, let's examine acceleration after passing a 70 km per hour speed-restricted turnout following station departure. Initially, from 70 km per hour, the DMU accelerates faster than the 0 Series, but at around 110 km per hour, their acceleration rates reverse, and by 150 km per hour they equalize and run parallel. Beyond that, the DMU is gradually overtaken. For Shinkansen applications, even on non-electrified lines, the tracks would likely be relatively flat and straight. In scenarios where continuous operation near 200 km per hour is required, the difference between the DMU and the 0 Series would be negligible. While locomotive-hauled passenger trains experience significant speed reductions even on slight inclines, distributed power DMUs maintain performance comparable to electric trains. When traveling through the Sekigahara gradient section, this becomes evident. At 20 per mile, the speed gradually decreases compared to the 0 Series, but since the gradient section is short, the delay is not significant. For locomotive-hauled passenger cars, however, the drop in speed is more pronounced, and even after passing the gradient, it takes a long time to recover speed. 6 years after the opening of the Shinkansen, during the height of Japan's rapid economic growth, an ambitious vision emerged to establish a nationwide high-speed transport network via Shinkansen and expressways, the National Shinkansen Network Plan. However, rising land prices, soaring construction costs, and the economic downturn following the oil shock turned this vision into little more than a dream. Ultimately, only the sections connecting Sapporo to Kagoshima, with the Jotsu and Hokuriku routes included, had any chance of becoming reality, while other planned lines were all but forgotten. Despite this, local governments in various regions quietly continued efforts to attract the Shinkansen to their areas, always insisting on full-scale specifications. There was widespread reluctance to accept downgraded lower-speed versions that merely resembled Shinkansen. No movement emerged advocating for true high-speed rail at Shinkansen standards on non-electrified single-track lines in regions such as eastern Hokkaido, Sanin, or Shikoku. If such a movement had existed before the economic downturn, perhaps the non-electrified Shinkansen EMUs featured in this video could have become a reality. The immense scale of the successful Shinkansen system made upgrades difficult, resulting in an extended era dominated by the standardized 0 Series, which, while revolutionary, lacked variation and became less exciting from a railway enthusiast's perspective. Had diesel-powered Shinkansen DMUs been introduced, they might have captured the imagination of rail fans in a new way. The envisioned train, featuring two DML-30 engines, a large body, and a high-speed gear ratio, would have had a significantly higher power-to-weight ratio than the later 181 series formations. Emitting even more smoke than the 181 series and roaring with turbocharger noise as it thundered out of major urban stations, such a train would have thrilled diesel train enthusiasts while likely being met with disdain and amusement by ordinary passengers. Much like Britain's HST debut demonstrated a sense of grandeur, Japan might have had its own spectacle with this diesel-powered Shinkansen DMU.